In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Adorable Will. I want to pray these titles, but I am unable to do it. Come and do it with me, and I'll do everything well. Jesus and Mary, I esteem you and I honor you, one with Luisa, who grows for heaven. Luisa, everything Jesus did in her soul at the beginning symbolizes creation. Luisa, who Jesus wanted all to himself and all his. Luisa, in whose soul Jesus wanted to lay his heaven. Luisa, in whom Jesus formed the cortege of the Son of his eternal will. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter of his will. Luisa, to whom Jesus opened the doors to let her enter to live in the triune God's house, in their divine will. Luisa, the triune God's fortunate heiress, to whom they manifested so much about their divine volition. Luisa, called to live in the triune God's house as their daughter, close to them, inside their will. Luisa, who the triune God amused themselves with, and made her aware of their most intimate secrets. Luisa, the soul surrounded by the triune God's divine immutability. Luisa, heavens that are always fixed and stable at their place of honor, with all their stars. Luisa, always heavens and immutable in her goods, and in the prerogatives with which the supreme will has endowed her. Luisa, who Jesus is within to direct all her acts in his divine will. Luisa, first copy of the soul who must live in the divine will. Luisa, who takes everything as though in her power. Luisa, who encloses everything in the divine will. Luisa, who rises into the triune God's unity to bring them everything and give them the true homages of all the effects of their single act. Luisa, one who fuses herself in the triune God's unity, and everything she does remains inside of them. Luisa, little daughter of Jesus' divine will. Luisa, first in whom Jesus formed the science of the divine will. Luisa, who the divine will identifies so much with the triune God that what is theirs is hers. Luisa, little daughter, rich with the triune God's own goods. Luisa, whose long sacrifice in bed inclined Jesus' goodness to give a good so great of making the divine will reign in the midst of creatures. Luisa, whose incessant asking for the kingdom of the divine will formed its life in her. Luisa, whose love formed in her the life of Jesus' love. Luisa, whose asking for the kingdom of the divine will is the prelude for others to receive the great gift of the supreme Fiat. Luisa, the newborn of the triune God's will, who loves them within their sea. Luisa, eclipsed within the divine will's light. Luisa, whose littleness forms the little drops of light in the sea of the divine will. Luisa, whose reparations form a wall of light around Jesus. Luisa, whose love in the divine will forms a wall of love, of light for Jesus. Luisa, whose adorations and reparations form a wall of light, of adorations, of reparations for Jesus. Luisa, who surrounded Jesus with an impregnable wall of his divine will. Luisa, one for whom there are no nights or sunsets, dawn or daybreak, but always full day. Luisa, who the light of the divine will gives itself to as her nature, and it remains as her property. Luisa, who possesses her own sun and never withdraws. Luisa, the one who called back again the divine Fiat into her soul. Jesus and Mary, I honor you and I cherish you, one with Luisa, who denied nothing to the divine Fiat. Luisa, who let the divine Fiat dominate freely. Luisa, in whom the divine Fiat administered its vivifying and nourishing virtue. Luisa, who the divine Fiat called into its dwelling, to call back in her the life of the destroyed goods. Luisa, whose acts, rounds, and continuous asking for the kingdom upon earth constitutes the right for other creatures to be able to receive again the kingdom of the divine will with the life of all its goods. Luisa, in whom Jesus placed the springing font, and from this font he opens many channels. Luisa, from whose font Jesus gives everyone the right to take the goods that this font possesses. Luisa, daughter of Jesus' divine will, to whom he made known all the peculiarities with which man was created. Luisa, who comprehended the excess of the Supreme Being's love and the right of their fiat to reign in man. Luisa, the soul who acquires more degrees of happiness, sanctity, strength, divine beauty with her acts in the divine will. Luisa, who feels in created things the happiness of her Creator that they bring to her. Luisa, who feels the nature of the divine will's happiness. Luisa, who heaven is not far from, but inside of her. Luisa, an act of the divine will. Luisa, who repeats for herself all the acts the divine will does, and gives it the glory, the requital of its divine acts. Luisa, creature in whom the divine fiat is triumphant. Luisa, in whom the divine fiat finds a pure act of its will. Luisa, creature who the divine fiat loves so much and keeps her clasped in its lap of light. Luisa, in whose heart Jesus dwells as his living temple. Luisa, to whom Jesus showed himself as all love to call her back and all others to live as his children. Luisa, poor daughter of Jesus. Luisa, whose acts have the virtue of being as though always new and continuous. Luisa, the soul who remains so identified that she does not feel a stranger with her Creator. Luisa, all of the Supreme Being and the Divine Being is all hers. Luisa, with enrapturing trust, rises into the unity of the will of her Creator. Luisa, whose acts in the divine will come to form the life of the divine will in her. Luisa, who the divine will encloses itself in, filling her completely. Luisa, the creature under a reign of light and of varied and rare beauties that enrapture the divine being. Luisa, whose human littleness is transmuted into the beauties of the divine being's divine qualities. Luisa, in whom Jesus expands the boundaries of his will. Luisa, whose love is sweet to Jesus. Luisa, whose love the triune God hears, their echo and their divine fibers. Luisa, the repeater of the triune God's love. Luisa, the divine will's repairer. Luisa, creature whose agony Jesus feels poured in his divine person. Luisa, who Jesus rocks in the divine will to communicate to her his divine rest. Luisa, faithful soul in whom the divine being can operate. Luisa, faithful creature. Jesus and Mary, I cherish you and I love you. One with Luisa, daughter of Jesus' volition. Luisa, daughter who flashes in the air of her love toward Jesus. Luisa, who by absolute will of Jesus possesses by right of property the inheritance of his divine fiat. So by right she may ask for its kingdom to come upon earth. Luisa, victim. Luisa, creature who lets not one act of the divine will escape her. Luisa, creature who runs to each operating act of divine will, adores its acts, thanks them, loves them, and everywhere honors the supreme volition. Luisa, creature who keeps the divine will's acts company, and in her littleness she would want to secure all of its acts with her little love. Luisa, one who can defend the rights of a will so holy. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter of his divine volition. Luisa, one who, in doing her acts, draws into herself all the acts of Jesus' fiat. Luisa, daughter of Jesus' divine will. Luisa, the soul who acquires and makes a triumph of the many divine thoughts within her mind. Luisa, who triumphs and takes possession of many divine acts. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, victim. Luisa, to whom Jesus gave so many graces too, and for whom he had so much love. Luisa, one who lives in the center of the sphere of the divine Son. Luisa, one who possesses the properties of the light of the divine Son and all of its goods. Luisa, Jesus' beloved creature. Luisa, of whose life Jesus is the center and sun. Luisa, inseparable from Jesus. Luisa, whose life palpitates in Jesus. Luisa, in whose inmost soul Jesus' life palpitates. Luisa, dearest daughter of Jesus' will. Luisa, the triune God's support. Luisa, the triune God's rest. Luisa, in whom Jesus performs the prodigy of his will speaking, loving, and operating. Luisa, one in whom the triune God's light and love echoes. Luisa, creature transformed into light and love. Luisa, good daughter, to whom Jesus manifested so many truths on his divine will. Luisa, Jesus' good daughter. Luisa, in whom Jesus feels his life. Luisa, in whom Jesus formed the real cortege of his divine life. Luisa, Jesus' little daughter. Luisa, who was administered the properties of light. Luisa, creature who can reach the point of forming the very divine life, all of love, within God. Luisa, little daughter of the Supreme Being's will. Luisa, Jesus' good daughter. Jesus and Mary, I love you and glory to my Creator. One with Luisa, who put herself in Jesus' hands like a little lamb. Luisa, the sacrificed one. Luisa, victim of Jesus' will. Luisa, true victim. Luisa, only for her did Jesus' love prepare the greatest cross. Luisa, of whom Jesus wanted to make great things. Luisa, with the resurrective seed of Jesus' light, gives Jesus always new things. Luisa, always in the act of rising again, continuously in the love, in the glory, and in the very life of her Creator. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, the soul who the divine will gives, the rights in the divine goods. Luisa, whose every act is a right that she acquires in the properties of her Creator. Luisa, who has placed her love in the eternal love, and has acquired the right to be loved. Luisa, who by right enjoys the light of the sun. Luisa, who by right breathes the air. Luisa, who by right drinks the water. Luisa, who by right feeds herself with the fruits of the earth. Luisa, who with these rights gives the triune God the love of their child, love of disinterest, love that says, true love. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, one who would make up for Jesus' pains on earth. Luisa, of whose state Jesus is the author. Luisa, who the divine will awaits with all love in the center of Jesus' heart. Luisa, the triune God's daughter, who they love and who loves them. Luisa, who the divine will pours upon the celestial dew of the light of its will. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, Jesus' good daughter. Luisa, little daughter of Jesus' will. Luisa, whose spontaneity of will rendered her beautiful and graceful in Jesus' eyes. Luisa, whose spontaneity of will drew Jesus to make his visits so often to her soul. Luisa, whose will sacrificed voluntarily for love of Jesus, was Jesus' smile and amusement, and had the virtue of changing his sorrows into joys. Luisa, who has the noble title, the precious characteristic of daughter of Jesus' will. Luisa, whose sufferings are Jesus' support and sustains his justice. Luisa, who Jesus kept in the state of voluntary pains, for so many years. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, in whom the light of the divine will is formed. Luisa, who Jesus keeps dear to him and cannot leave. Luisa, in whom Jesus placed the divine will as origin, means, and end. Luisa, one who Jesus makes comprehend his pains. Luisa, one to whom Jesus can confide his secrets. Jesus and Mary, I glorify you and I praise you, one with Luisa, one in whom Jesus can pour his flames of love that consume him. Luisa, Jesus' daughter, in whose soul he places the divine will as origin of life from which all of her acts descend. Luisa, fully ordered in her Creator. Luisa, who gives God the glory and the requital of love of all created things. Luisa, who embraces the work of creation. Luisa, one who has the divine will as origin and embraces the whole work of redemption. Luisa, one who gives Jesus the requital of the love and the glory of all the pains that he suffered in order to redeem man. Luisa, who has the divine will as end and gives Jesus the glory and requital of love for having prepared a celestial fatherland for creatures as their happy dwelling. Luisa, good daughter, to whom Jesus gave 6 angels for her custody, so that she may requite with her acts and love what the divine will did in pronouncing the 6 fiats in creation. Luisa, who must follow Jesus, the angels, to fulfill her mission of daughter of the divine will. Luisa, whose acts and sacrifice even of her life was necessary in order to make the divine will known and to make it reign. Luisa, who with her own love takes the Supreme Being's love and makes new love arise. Luisa, in whom God's love and heartbeat are substituted. Luisa, in whose blood perennial glory to her Creator circulates. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, whose repeated acts give Jesus the fruits of his work. Luisa, soul Jesus elected, and in who he forms his residence. Luisa, happy creature that fulfills the divine will, who gives Jesus everything, even himself. Luisa, whose acts are confirmed by God as divine acts and are sealed with the divine seal. Luisa, creature whose acts Jesus calls new creation that he makes in her. Luisa, confirmed in the good she does. Luisa, confirmed in the sanctity that she wants. Luisa, confirmed in the knowledge she possesses. Luisa, confirmed in the triumph of the sacrifice. Luisa, woman who finishes burning the temples of the infernal serpent. Luisa, woman who has the task from God to make the divine will known in order to make it rain. Luisa, who Jesus called to live in his divine will. Luisa, who Jesus gave the special and unique mission to make the divine will known. Luisa, another woman who the infernal serpent so much fears. Luisa, the woman Jesus makes use of to make up for the ruin the infernal serpent caused. Luisa, the woman Jesus makes use of to make the good that the infernal serpent tried to destroy arise for all. Luisa, who Jesus placed near the sovereign queen so that she may imitate her and make her a copy of the sovereign queen. Luisa, who Jesus placed in the hands of the sovereign queen. Luisa, who Jesus wanted similar to the sovereign queen. Luisa, who Jesus elected for the sole purpose of making his will known. Luisa, through her Jesus will obtain that thy kingdom come may have its fulfillment. Luisa, in whom the divine will operated in order to fulfill its greatest designs in the midst of the human generations. Luisa, in whose center of the stake of her long sacrifice Jesus made himself seen, and to whom he spoke. Jesus and Mary, I praise you and I thank you. One with Luisa, who Jesus finds voluntarily in his divine will. Luisa, who knows and loves the divine will. Luisa, inseparable from Jesus. Luisa, creature who plunges herself into the divine will, and into whom God plunges himself. Luisa, one who acquires ever new knowledges of her Creator. Luisa, one who the divine will wants to render what it itself is. Luisa, a little kingdom of the supreme Fiat. Luisa, repeater of the house of Nazareth. Luisa, tiny little house of Nazareth upon earth. Luisa, who heaven is not closed for. Luisa, who observes the same laws of the celestial fatherland. Luisa, who loves with the same love of the celestial fatherland. Luisa, who feeds herself with the same foods of the celestial fatherland. Luisa, who is incorporated into the kingdom of the triune God's interminable regions. Luisa, a channel for the triune God to enclose their work in more creatures. Luisa, one who lives in Jesus' royal palace. Luisa, blessed daughter. Luisa, fortunate creature that comes before the adorable majesty to remind them of their great love. Luisa, fortunate creature the adorable majesty redoubles their loving bonds with, giving her new graces, new light. Luisa, repeater of the adorable majesty's feast. Luisa, good daughter. Luisa, daughter of Jesus' divine volition. Luisa, creature in custody within the divine light, and in act of receiving continuously from God. Luisa, creature who never leaves the triune God alone, and has the great good of enjoying their company. Luisa, one who remembers and recognizes all creation as property of her Creator. Luisa, one who draws closer around her celestial Father as a daughter who recognizes his goods. Luisa, one who loves God as her Father, and they love her as their daughter. Luisa, one who Jesus gives possession of the goods, of redemption. Luisa, happy creature around whom Jesus' pains, works, and steps line up. Luisa, to whom Jesus gives the possession of his love. Luisa, who Jesus made a prodigy of his love and his will. Luisa, who God's paternity with the vibrant light of the sun calls her daughter. Luisa, who all God's works call daughter of the great celestial Father. Luisa, by whom all God's works want to be possessed. Luisa, creature to whom the triune God chose to manifest the many knowledges of their will, its great prodigies. Luisa, with whom Jesus formed new bonds to bind the creatures in his will. Luisa, who Jesus looks at as belonging to the whole human family, and the good of her is communicated to others. Luisa, who, with the Queen Mama, Jesus calls my two mamas. Jesus and Mary, I thank you and I esteem you, one with Luisa, in whose soul Jesus' words resound with his creative power, giving her the maternity as her nature. Luisa, Jesus' dear Mama, whom his Fiat keeps for him on earth. Luisa, daughter of Jesus' will. Luisa, everything that is Jesus's is hers. Luisa, daughter of the triune God's will, who returns to them their works, their love, their goodness, and more, and leaves them at their place. Luisa, one who forms in her soul the book of the divine Fiat. Luisa, one who can easily read the great book of Jesus' will of all creation. Luisa, peacemaker between God and the creatures. Luisa, who fights her Creator with weapons of peace and love in order to disarm him and render him favorable, and change the scourges into mercy. Luisa, creature who Jesus praises before the whole celestial court. Luisa, one who always deals with light. Luisa, Jesus' good daughter. Luisa, the soul in whom the Supreme Being finds their divine nourishments. Luisa, the soul in whom the Supreme Being finds their properties. Luisa, the soul in whom the Supreme Being finds their dwelling. Luisa, the soul in whom the Supreme Being find themselves in their home. Luisa, the soul in whom the Supreme Being find themselves in their center. Luisa, the soul in whom the Supreme Being find themselves in the midst of their properties. Luisa, the soul who is the smile of heaven and of the earth. Luisa, the soul whose every act forms a rapture for her Creator. Luisa, the creature in whom the Creator feels the sweet force of His will. Luisa, one who enraptures the will of heaven. Luisa, the point of the earth where there appears a nimbus of heaven. Luisa, the point of the earth where the divine will is operating. Luisa, the point of the earth where there is the smile of the celestial fatherland. Luisa, to whom the divine will entrusts all the secrets of the history of creation. Luisa, in whose soul the divine will deposits all its joys and intimate sorrows. Luisa, the divine will's secretary, in whom it paints the sun, the heavens, the stars, the sea, the beautiful flowerings. Luisa, creature in whom the divine will forms the new creation. Luisa, creature in whom is seen new heavens, suns more refulgent than in the very creation.
You have reached the end of day 25 of the titles of Luisa. Fiat.